you were talking about the time that we are in right now in this industry, and the amazing part about it is they broke up cable, created streaming services, and now the streaming services are starting to bundle back up and it's becoming cable again. But the beauty of where we are,
Fine point on it.
Is that now that you're selling directly to the consumer, diversity is no longer the tokenism that it was when we grew up, but now diversity is a requirement of the business model.
So what a moment we get to co-create and share. You know, I said and thank you for this opportunity and honor SAG-AFTRA, the foundation, to make something special happen. And not just me, and not just the men who are up here and these actors who are brilliant in and of their own right, but they also happen to be Black, in case you weren't sure. And that's really important. It's important because there is a story. Their stories are so important. There's a quote that I want to start off with, which is an African proverb, and it says, "The lion's story will never be known as long as the hunter is the one to tell it." Yeah, so the lion's story will never be known. Your story, my story, their story, as long as the hunter is the one to tell it. And so we want to allow tonight a discussion about race, about gender, about masculinity. What does it mean for your artistry? How has it helped? How has it hurt? The book that was mentioned that Courtney and I just launched is called The Invisible Ache: Black Men Identifying Their Pain and Reclaiming Their Power. And so that's what we're really here to talk about tonight, what it means and what acting means. So I'd love if each of you could start by sharing something personal that you want the audience to know that has to do with your acting, and to share something that you might not want them to know. And they all look like...
Oh, just a very easy question.
I know. I just saw the eyes go like, what? I mean, yeah, and that doesn't mean the deepest, but it does mean... One of you said to me, and it's not that I don't know who it is, but again, I'm not going to out anyone, said I'm excited and I'm nervous. So that could be something that we don't want someone to know. You know, what is it? Never let them see you sweat. And I always say that's great for a deodorant commercial, and it's really terrible for the soul. It's really terrible for the soul. So, Courtney B.
I was a apprentice at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts back in 1980 or so. And that was the question that, because I thought, you know, I was just started acting and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was doing voices. And so I got an apprenticeship, Ford Foundation, to go up to Lenox, Massachusetts, and I had an audition in the kitchen of the Edith Wharton's estate. The Mount is what it was called. I thought as I was taking the bus up there that I would be, you know, maybe in a theater or something. I was in the kitchen. People were cooking and cutting things up. And so I didn't know what acting was. And so the apprentices all gathered. There was a company event where we were introduced to everyone, and everyone was just a lot of love in the room, and everyone was just like this. And we apprentices, all 15 of us, were all, you know, in the front, you know, standing behind, and we were just full of love, and the room was warm, and everyone was just having such a good time. And then Tina Packer, the artistic director, stood up and said, "Well, you know, I'd like you to stand up and say, you know, each of the apprentices, one by one, stand up and say 2 things. So you've blessed us. 2 things you want us to know about yourselves." And we were all like, "Oh, that's so easy. That's so fun." and then 2 things that you don't want us to know about yourselves. And this is, I didn't know what acting was, but I said, that's not what I'm not doing that. So I was backpedaling, and it took me a good year, the end of that summer, to finally, understand the emotional impact of what acting was, which was sharing the emotion. And we did we did a week of clown. And you all are now relaxed now that I'm babbling a little bit. So we did a clown exercise. Now you're chilling.
Keep talking.
Chilling. Yeah, you're chilling now.
The Courtney Show.
Okay, so we did a clown exercise. So I'm getting there. We did a clown exercise when we were in a circle. And the master clown teacher, Mary Conway, said, there was one entrance, said, all of you can, one by one come into the circle, and you have to make everybody laugh and make everybody cry before you leave. And we had, the red noses and, packed, pants but no profanity, no vulgarity. And one by one, we all failed. And finally, she said, stop, everybody stop. And say, so the issue is when you have to acknowledge failure. Once you get into the arena and you attempt to make us laugh or make us cry and you fail, at the moment of failure and you acknowledge and you're naked, at that point you can do anything you want to do. And we have to be willing to go back to kindergarten, as I say, and admit I don't know anything. I don't know what I want to do. And so I guess my statement is I love acting, but at the same time, sometimes I'm so afraid. I wish I was, sometimes I say to myself, and I do say this, I wish I was a tree. Because they just sit there and they don't really have to deal with the pressures of standing in front of somebody when you don't know and you have to go on and people expecting us one by one to say something and you don't know what to say and you don't know what to do and you don't know how to do it. And that for me is what life is. Once I admit I don't know and I don't know what to say and I don't know anything, at that point I can begin to begin. But if I don't take the moment to acknowledge, and every project I do, I have to start with, I don't know, and the fear of that. And that's why I say actors are the most courageous people in the world, because performers, because we go out there not knowing and dealing with fear and pain, and then, but being able to translate it into life. That's the next one.
That's great.
That's why he's the OG.
That's right. That's wonderful. And you can go in order, you can go as the spirit moves, but I will add this to what Courtney just shared about sometimes the longing to be a tree. And I was saying earlier, we were at Cedar Sinai doing something, and Courtney and I were, and one of the things I talked about is, fox don't want to be frogs, and butterflies don't want to be a giraffe. A hyena doesn't want to be a cow, but human beings often want to be something, a tree. We somehow want to be something other than what we are in any given moment. And so I just would love for you in any order to share in this moment as you're looking at me.
No, well, just because dovetailing up with what Courtney just shared,
Yes.
and what you were just saying, the thing that is both something that I would love to, that I enjoy sharing with people, and also something that I don't want people to know at the same time, is how much FU I have inside of me for anybody trying to tell me what I should be as a black man. I can't stand it when white people try and do it to me. And I also get pretty pissed off when black folks try and do it to me. and it comes from all different directions, and so it manifests itself. I remember my very first job in this town. I came to do a daytime soap opera for Aaron Spelling, who didn't normally do daytime, so it was like a whole brand new thing for him, and he was figuring that out. And he was an amazing person who wanted to be everybody's granddad, wouldn't pay you a dime more than he absolutely had to. But once you were in the family, you were in the family, and even if you messed up, he'd try and get you a job later on and everything like that. But the point being, that first job, he would come around. My mom still calls me, is Aaron there? Like, she knew him and everything. I'm like, you don't really know the man. He remembered your name one time. But I remember walking into the offices where the producers were and that sort of thing, and I was going to ask somebody a question, and two things happened in short order. One, a woman who became like my big sister on that show, and we're still super tight to this day. She's been an executive for a lot of different companies over the years, and she overheard this moment where one of the writers asked me to, hey, Jason, come here. I just we're so happy you're here. We're so excited for the show. I just want you to know, we've got you covered. We've got the Ebonics Dictionary. We've got the Urban Dictionary. We got true story, swear to God. You can't make it up. And she said, and I just sat there and this stare, right? And then, and again, being defined by somebody else as to what I'm supposed to be as a black person, I said, let me help you out. Write what you want them to say, and when I say it, it'll be black. And the woman who became like my big sister overheard this, and I walked out. She was like, come here. And we sat in her office, and I spent the entire 3 years of that series running up to her office every once in a while going, can I close the door for a second? And she knew it was about to get real. So that was, both sides, the space where I didn't have to, where nobody, she was not defining me, and other folks who were.
Yeah. No, that's, again, so we're going to come back to the FU because there's so much meat in our rage. And sometimes we don't have space or safety to own it, to honor it, to learn from it. So I'm really glad that you're inviting us into the rage when someone wants to, again, the lion story will never be known as long as the hunter is the one to tell it. And that does create rage. So we'll come back, but thank you for that.
I mean, I don't really know what to say. You know what I mean? But I will say, we're all artists and stuff like that. And as artists, I love being able to express myself and tell story. That's really the lens that I deal with my inner self. I always say theater is my therapy. I think I probably should go to therapy. I'm beyond that, and I desire to. I just have not done that, and I don't exactly know why. But
that's the thing you don't want us to know.
You see it? You know what I mean? But what I love about what I do, though, is that it allows me to deal with some of the things that goes on inside of me. And a lot of times I think in this public eye, you are kind of have to like walk through a certain pathway. You can't always just be yourself, and that sometimes can be stifling. And that's really is that there's a part of me that loves to be able to do other people's words, but it's also a challenge for me to get up and say my own words, because sometimes it's like there's a lot going on that you don't always reveal, and sometimes you can find yourself in a little bit of a box because people, he's always so kind, he's so this and that, boom, boom. But again, you have that side of that is like there's a lot more than what you see right here. It can run deeper. I don't know if I've really answered your question, but there you go.
No, you have, because there isn't a boxed answer. That's part of what we're talking about. Paul Laurence Dunbar said, "We wear the mask that grins and lies," and it's not because we're liars. It's because we're trying to navigate what all three of you have talked about. Like, what does it mean for someone to see me? Particularly when they want to reward me for either going into the Ebonics dictionary because that's all they can see, or because they want to reward you for being so kind, You know, there's some manipulation in that when, you know, you're so kind, which means don't ever not be. Right.
Doormat.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So now that you said, please be a doormat, that's what it means with such power and passion. Yeah.
I guess I have to talk. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that part of the world. And the part of Delaware that I grew up in is all white, like all white. Like look down my street to the left, all white, look down my street to the right, all white, white. So that's how I grew up. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I felt kind of invisible, which I guess is the word that keeps coming up here tonight. And there's always something about that made me angry. Always. And I didn't grow up wanting to be an actor at all. Never crossed my mind, wasn't interested really at all. But I went to the University of Virginia, same as Wahoo Wow.
Now we know who we're going drinking with after the show.
I got all kinds of
The Hobbs are
peeps
here.
out here.
Oh, the homies in the house.
Homies. Wahoo Wow. And a guy that Jason and I know well, Richard Warner, got me to audition for a play called Raisin in the Sun. And I wasn't doing anything better or anything else because there was no other black people in the department at the time. So he asked me to audition and he gave me the role. And I did it. And that's the first time where I felt like, oh, I'm not invisible. I'm up here and I've got power. The room is still, it's quiet. I have everybody's attention. There was something about that where I really, for the first time, felt like I was coming into who I really am. And that's when I felt like, okay, I like this feeling. This is who I am. This is what I should be doing. And I guess I've never psychoanalyzed why I become an actor or what that's about, but it started there. It started in that moment of feeling like, okay, I'm not invisible. I'm here. You have to respect me, and I have to have your attention. And if I do my job right, we'll fly together, you know? And so that's something that was always magical to me. It's something that I don't want people to know. Let me think. Around that same time, when I did A Raisin in the Sun, my father died. I was 18 in college. And to be honest with you, if my father had not died, I think I've only told you this, I think, I don't think I'd be an actor. I didn't have the courage to go for it or to think it was even possible. But after he died, I felt like, you know what? F it. I'm just going to go for it because nothing else matters right now. And I feel terrible saying it because one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life was my father dying at that age, but it's also the kind of the best thing in a way because it brought me here.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. The way in which the thing that broke us also made us. And that's such a oxymoron, and yet it is so true. You know, I'm thinking when you talk about your father dying, my father died when I was 27, and I was married at the time. And I said when he took his last breath, I took my first. We were really close. He was my whole life in a lot of ways. And there was something about him being gone that let me put my wings on and fly. So I would have never traded it, but I didn't have a choice. And you didn't have a choice about our dads, and we're going to hear more, Courtney's dad. But it is amazing that sometimes someone not being here may allow us to arrive in our own lives. Yeah. So thank you. Yes.
Hey everybody, my name's Jovan. If you haven't heard.
That's right.
But yeah, what do I want to share? Acting for me has become a place of community. It's provided me confidence, solace, and just a sense of belonging that I didn't have in my previous community in college. I played football. I was one of the only people in my circle that thought I was going to go pro. My friends and family, like, they knew it. They were, I mean, damn, right? This is my life. No, but I played, and I think it's an accomplishment to be able to play in college. It's a tough, right? Give me some credit. But I was the last one holding on to that dream because, frankly, I can say it now with comfort. I was third string running back. I never touched the field, and but I thought I was gonna make it. Special teams during spring ball. Special teams. But I had the dream. That's what my dad says. He had the dream. But I knew it was going south when my coach would bring us in every year and be like, you're a good student, Jovan, and you work hard and you hustle, but you should get into like student government. Which is heartbreaking, right? But I say that to say, when it was time for me to switch paths, like I think anybody has to do when they come to a difficult time in their life, is to face it, that's not gonna be your career or whatever your journey is, and come to terms with it, and then hopefully something else will present itself to you. And when acting came about, like a couple of these gentlemen here, I didn't think I was going to be an actor. Writing came natural to me in college, and I had done plays in middle school at my church. And there was an older woman who thought that I had some ability, and she was like, you should pursue this further. And we were in Maryland. And I was like, ma'am, I appreciate what you're saying, your sentiments. I worked really hard on this role, learned my lines, my 3 lines. But I'm gonna be in the pros one day, so so when you see me, it won't be on the silver screen. That's right. That's right. Doing Shakespeare, I'm gonna be scoring touchdowns, baby. Take it to the bank. And she was like, well, if that doesn't work out, you should let me know, and I can introduce you to my sister, because she's out there trying to do her thing, and her sister turned out to be Viola Davis. So that was an interesting through line that I couldn't
like you do, right? Like
I
one
couldn't
does.
plan that. That's something I couldn't plan. I mean, and I owe her older sister Diane everything, because she spoke on my behalf, and Viola and Julius have been paramount in my development as an actor. So it's been a great. I realize I've been very lucky in my career early on, and I appreciate these moments to get to talk and meet other actors that I admire. So this is cool, and thank you, appreciate it. But something I don't want to share. I'm not a huge fan of public speaking, but it's not because of inability to do so, but just because I can get into a rant where I talk too much, or I'm just lazy and I don't want to talk, man. So I was the one that expressed to our wonderful moderator that I was excited but nervous.
I wasn't going to out you.
It's fine. I was ready for it. It's okay. So yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for that.
Listen, you can play a football player as many times as you want in the movie, so you chilling. You good. Something I want y'all to know more than anything is, so I went to college but didn't afford myself the space to study acting. I went for writing creatively and psychology, because my thought process was, if I could understand the human psyche, I'd have a better insight into what in my performance could ring as truthful on the day or on set. Moreover than that, I think as I get older and I try to characterize what about that I found valuable at that time in my life, I'd have to say my penchant and my curiosity in all things, I think, is kind of what incites my creativity. And that's not just to say I'm curious about everything. I think it's more curiosity about things as I see them, and how my perception is entirely my own, and how other people's perspective can change that. It's why the most gratitude I have in my life and in my career is being able to share discussions and discourse with people that I admire and I respect, because I feel I come out of those conversations a more enlightened and more astounding actor and hopefully young man. Similarly, to that same notion of, allowing change and growth that I try to afford myself, something I wouldn't necessarily want you to know is this, kind of to piggyback off of what has been said before, is this fear that I have, this ineffable sentiment of not allowing help or assistance from outside entities to change or alter what I know to be comfortable and safe. And there's no better way to characterize that than when I first decided I wanted to be an actor. This was before I even went to college. I said to my mentor, who happened to also be my father, bless him, I was like, what do you do about your hair? What do you do? Do you bring a barber on set? What is your modum operandi? And first of all, he said, I got two answers. One, get a wig person. Just go bald. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Two was, cut your own hair. He's like, you can't count on other people to know what you need before you tell it to them. So you might as well take care of it yourself. I think I heard that at a time in my life where I internalized that to mean it's you versus them. Make sure that you have everything in order so that when it comes time to be in their hands, you've got all your stuff figured out. So I, to varying degrees of success, cut my own hair. Why are you laughing? I'm confused. I cut my hair before I came here. But don't look. And I noticed what if I could retroactively go back and have a discussion with my younger self, it would be you step on set and the goal, the hope is a community of people with the outset decision to make the best art imaginable, possible. And the harder you work to fight against that or to be insular in your own perception of your own idea as a performer, the harder that community will kind of make itself apparent or evident in your work. So though I do still cut my hair, I am trying my damnedest to be more receptive to help and support of people either on set or just in my personal life, but it's a goal.
No, each of you really touched on vulnerability because that's what we're talking about in different ways. Trusting someone, letting someone in, being really angry, being really nice. But that there is vulnerability, what does it mean for each of you? And how do you use your vulnerability? How do you use your story? How do you use your feelings, your anger, your joy, your despair? How do you use it?
We were at, before we came here, we were at Cedar Sinai and talking about these things with a group of administrators, staff, doctors, nurses, and this very muscle-bound gentleman, brother, I saw him come in a little later, and I said, wow, okay, so ex-football player, wow, he's here, got it. And then he walked around, and I saw him come. I said, oh, he's going to sit down. I said, oh, no, because it was a question and answer time. So, oh, no, he's coming to the mic. Oh, wow. Okay. He came up to the mic, and I didn't hear all I missed some things, but he was saying his father just passed away. And Was it a year ago or something? It was the anniversary of his anniversary. And then there was a pause. So you know it was fresh. And I said to myself, that's the first step. Because he was saying the rage. Yeah. We mentioned.
Yes, he talked about
the rage. What do I do with this rage?
And the rage, not outwardly toward other people, but the rage inside toward himself, his fear that his rage might harm him.
Right. And the fact that he took the first step, I mean, he didn't, Dr. Robin, he didn't have to come up and say anything.
Absolutely.
He could have just sat there with everyone else and not said anything.
Yes.
But when he did that, the whole room was his family. Mm-hmm. Everybody in here was his family. And that's the journey. I said, and I hugged him. Afterwards, I hugged him and I said, you have begun. And the question for us all is, the first step. The next one is, what do I do with myself while I'm waiting for? I said, because it could take weeks, months, years for the turn to happen. And what do we do to take care of ourselves in the turn while we're waiting for? And that's a question in life, because everybody has to wait. And what do you do so that you don't? Well, you miss your moment because it's taking too long. I'm going to go do this over here. And just as you turn this way, it was right in front of you, went right by you. And I want to stay present. It means that, that means I got to stay with this, as I said from the beginning, the fear. What do I do with, I'm so afraid. I couldn't get on stage because my knees would shake. How do I deal with my fear? And that's the question for me if I walk away from my fear, I'm going to miss the moment. But this is I've got to deal with this in order to be able to be ready for the next thing that I've got to deal with. And that pain, that rage, that fear, how do we stay present and stay in there and not bail just because I'm afraid? And it's work.
Yeah. Courtney, the other thing, and some of you may or may not know this, and I think it's the time to share this, that Courtney's father died 33 years ago of suicide. And his godson, 3 years ago in 2020 died. He was 23 years young, beautiful, African-American, smart, kind, generous young man, and was struggling, with some mental health issues. And during COVID, we all know you couldn't go into the hospital with your loved one, regardless, didn't matter who you were. And so he went to the hospital twice and came out, and his parents said, and again, this is Courtney's godson. So the parents were very involved. They said, well, what are they going to do? How are they going to help you? And he said, no, I'm fine. And they were like, well, no, you're not. Maybe you're fine right now, but that cycle, it's going to happen again. Like, what's the plan? And there wasn't a third time to go to the hospital because he took his life. And just as an educational piece of information, we don't use committed suicide because suicide is not a crime. It's being full of despair and not knowing that life can get better. So there's no, committing robbery. This is that the soul got sat on in a way that it lost its fight. But I share that because you bring certainly your father's suicide, and then more recently your nephew's suicide. And I think it's important for us to talk tonight as we are sitting here with Black men of excellence. But what does it mean to be excellent? Does that mean that I'm excellent and I don't have rage? You know, Courtney said on one of our interviews somewhere that his father was his hero. And it was for Fresh Air on NPR. And I said, and his father is still his hero. Because sometimes we think that humanity, like the more real we are, if we're angry or something goes wrong, that person somehow loses their light and their value. And so I'd love to hear from any of you about how you take that raw space and use it.
Well, I mean, one thing I want to pick up on is, I think when you're dealing with character, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You are taking a jump off of a bridge. You are really taking a leap with not knowing where you're going to land. And that's a very fearful thing. And you have to step outside of yourself to say, you know what, I'm going for it. I don't know how it's going to end up, but I'm going to put my whole self into it. I think that's also a thing that we as Black men need to translate into our everyday lives, because we, as you said, of excellence, and I think we're all Black people of excellence in our own ways. And you have these guardrails that are up that you feel you cannot step outside of. But the more that we can step outside of that and be vulnerable, like the gentleman who walked around to the mic, that's how you can start to connect. That's how you can start to see the humanity. We can stop, for lack of better words, performing this play in real life and be our full selves. That's how we can really start to connect and be there for each other and support each other along the way. And as an artist, I really try to take all of those things that have hurt me over the course of my life, all those things that have inspired me over the course of my life, my victories, my defeats, anytime I've shed a tear on the pillow, anytime I've looked and see the sun rise and it just brought so much joy to my eyes, I try to pack all those things away so that when I'm doing a character, I can allow myself to go there, because it can only be real for me if it's real inside of me. And I can't manufacture that in my mind, you know, and when you have, I guess, material that can challenge you to go there, that's when the beauty happens, because then you get to say something, you know. I don't know if that, again, I don't know if that's answering your question, but that's where my mind is at.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's it. I mean, look, I'm a Black man from the South. My dad was in the Navy. He was on a ship that collided with another ship and went down, so he had PTSD. And then he was a Black man from the South who grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, so he had double PTSD. And, you know, it's you don't show emotion. So there was no emotion, you know, like you don't show emotion. You don't show emotion. And then I took an acting class in college. Fucked that all up. And suddenly that thing that you've hidden away, because up to that point, like my superpower is I don't get too high or get too low. I stay chill. I stay on target. Stay on target. Stay on target. Military brat, like I said. And so when it comes out, it would explode. Like I wouldn't start to get annoyed. You keep going into it would pass when somebody else would get annoyed. It would pass when somebody else would get a little mad, and then I would blow up and there's a mushroom cloud where you used to be. Mm-hmm. And then when I started acting, suddenly I can take all that and put it into this positive space. It, you know, like you said, you know, you don't need therapy when you can live in somebody else's shoes for a second and use your stuff and get it out. And the next thing you know, I'm actually chill in my regular life. And it hits all those different aspects. I mean, they talk about like how to use it in the craft, and then there's how do you use it as a platform, because you start to become, once you actually tap into it, you become more empathetic. Once you become more empathetic to other people's humanity, you actually want to reach out and help other folks. So you're like, if I got any kind of platform, what the hell can I do with it? Who can I reach? You know, who can I holler at? Who can I, you know, let me give you a hand up. And then there's also what it does for you in your life. And it just became a thing. Ever since then, it's been all the drama gets saved for the stage. You know, not my regular life. So doesn't matter what my kids do, doesn't matter what my wife does, doesn't matter what's going on in the world. It's got to go deep before it actually really starts to get me. I feel it, but I know I've got a place to put it, so it doesn't control me the way it did when I was a kid. You know what I mean? And so that for me is what, you know, acting put in my life.
When I think about anger, to me, what comes up is I'm energized when I make other people angry, in this sense.
Oh, that's what that was. Got it. Okay.
Not you. Okay. Not you. Not you.
Don't.
Well, I mean, what I mean by that is, if you move through life and exist in the world in such a way that makes the people who believe that you're inferior angry, I like that. To me, that's what my anger goes to. It goes to rebuking anyone who would dare suggest that any of us is less than. There's something about that that motivates me every single day as I walk through my own regular life and in my work. It makes me feel like, okay, in my work, I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that there's never any doubt that I'm a man in full that cannot be denied, and in a way that makes people who would dare suggest otherwise angry.
Yeah.
And that's what works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I mean, very powerful, because you're not, you know what you're doing. Meaning, yeah, he said, oh yeah. Right.
Remember that. Right.
That will come back to haunt you, Sean. That will come back to haunt you.
I'm not No, but that's, and I'm thinking, I know Wilmington, Delaware. It's fine. And when you talk about being the only one, you look to the left and you look to the right, and it was just you. And all of the messages about not being whole, like a whole human being. Black people were said to be only 3/5 human. I mean, it's hard to imagine. I see people kind of grimacing right now because we can't imagine. And yet we can imagine that somehow, and you're living that, and you're proving that not only are you whole, but part of your wholeness is you get to have all of your feelings. I mean, that's part of the birthright, our divine birthright, as people, but as Black men, that I get to be everything and have all of my feelings, including anger. And that's, it's rough when there are people who are invested in making money off of having people afraid of you. I mean, in here, people want your autograph, but you step out there, if they don't know that you're you, they may cross the street, they may grab their purse, they may, and so what's the price? And some of that is to show that I'm fully human and I can be angry and joyful. I can have all of that. So, yeah. Yes. You should.
I have a love-hate relationship with rage, in that I hate it because I know it's such an exhausting emotion to hold on to, but I feel like I always have it in me all the time. Like even when I'm joking around and around friends and loved ones, I always have it. And I think it just comes from this fear of feeling like not being good enough. If I could go back to football was everything to me. And growing up, I did well in school, had great grades, but I just had this dream that I always had with me since I was little. And when it was time for me to part from it, it was kind of like, what the hell am I going to do now? Absolutely. And that, I think it's instilled this level of competition in me that I cannot get rid of, or I haven't figured it out yet. If we're talking about us taking therapy and shit, but it's just like, I just haven't dealt with it. My manager, she's like, yeah, you need to deal with it. Right. Right? But it's like, it's that feeling of not being good enough in the sport that I've always chased and always been good at up until college. And then when I got into acting, I really appreciated what you said, Mason, about it's me versus everybody else. And that's such an exhausting way to feel, yes. Especially in a profession that doesn't require that. I mean, there's space as I've gotten older and more mature, that there's She's like, mature. There's space for everyone to find their voice and I think everyone in the world obviously has a talent. It's your responsibility to cultivate it and explore it. But to get back onto the rage aspect, I'm afraid to like let it go because it served me so well in the roles that I've played. And again, my dad was in the military as well, retired veteran. I'm lucky in that even though we grew up military, he's super strict. He was always really loving and kind and understanding of the things that I wanted to explore and the things that I wanted to venture into. So I'm not sure where that rage comes from. Maybe him, because he has a temper problem too. Sorry if he ends up watching this. He's gonna be like, why you tell him that? Skip Blaine don't got no rage. But I think I get that from him, just being impatient and wanting everything now, like instant gratification. Those are all things that I work on. But yeah, rage, fear, feeling like I can't compare to other artists that I really enjoy watching and admire. That's something that's really exhausting to me, but I've always taken that into roles that I've done. And I mean, I think it's worked for me. So it's kind of scary to think of letting go, because then like, what the hell am I gonna do now?
Well, I think also what's important about what you're talking about is, why would you need to let it go? And what I mean is, I think that's part of the fantasy, that we need to let go of, as if somehow rage and anger are bad. Like nice and pleasant and polite are the things we can own, but that rage is bad. The question is, do I understand it? Can it inform me? Can it empower me? And not to demonize it, particularly as Black men, to not demonize this righteous indignation. And even when you're talking about having to give up football, the dream of it, that's a loss. Like, so where's the room for grief too? Inside of rage is often sadness. It's just easier to be angry because we know how to do it. And particularly men are affirmed for their anger. They're not affirmed for their gentleness. Yeah. So just to remember that, like, you don't want to really get rid of your rage. You just want to befriend it. Well,
kind of to piggyback off of that as eloquently and beautifully as said, that I won't be able to upkeep, but like yourself, I'm self-deprecating. It's how I handle myself. I also played football. I did not make it to college. So I found, and I was privileged growing up in many ways, most poignantly in so much that I, by virtue of my lovely parents, had a space in which I felt comfortable articulating my frustrations, my rage, what bothered me. That is something I don't believe they were afforded in their childhood, which oftentimes made it feel like it was maybe new for them, but they did the best they could, and that's all I could ask for. But it was in sports, my brief stint on the field, that I found a lot of gratification in the willingness to weaponize anger and rage in a way that felt productive for me. I'm a gentle guy. I don't necessarily want to hurt anybody, but something about being given a goal where that encompasses maybe hurting someone, the only way I was able to get through that was with an ability to tap into whatever rage and frustration I found innate to myself. And it wasn't until acting became an avenue that I pursued, or what have you, that I remember asking, I was like, how do you cry? Like, how are you crying on cue? Like, what are you doing? And you'd see some people cry from the same eye in the same space on the same, and I'll never forget. They said, well, why don't you stop trying to cry? Just think about what it is you're saying and just say it from that space that given the circumstances and the context. And if you're actually in it, if you really do feel it, it will come. And I think on the subject of rage and anger, I don't think in a lot of cases, unfortunately, there are better ways to know more about yourself or the person that maybe your rage or anger is directed upon. Those moments of hardship and difficult discourse are usually where we learn more about who we are to each other. And I think as far as that relates to acting, some of the most gratifying and satiating aspects of performance, I think, lie in the most difficult and most emotionally draining scenes and circumstances, specifically as it deals with rage. And
when I finally did find my way into therapy, one of the after my father's suicide, my mother challenged my sister and I, after we got my mother's affairs in order. After a month, my mother challenged my sister and I, said, I would like you all to go back to your respective cities and find a therapist. I'm going to do the same thing here in Detroit. And one of the things that when I finally, all the process of trying to find a therapist, it's, very frustrating at times. But when I finally did find the therapist, my therapist had said, what do you, and I said, and when I'm on the stage, I'm really, all the things that we were saying, it's just alive. I know what to do. I know where to go. I know how to feel. I feel alive. But she said, Courtney, little Jewish lady, 5 feet from the ground, Dr. Margaret Kornfeld. When you find your therapist, you think it's going to be, so Jewish, like that. She said, Courtney, what do you do when you're not on stage? Most of the time, you're not on stage. And she said, Courtney, how do you make decisions? I said, Doc, I do like most people do, right? I mean, I flip a coin. That's what we do for acting. Right? Isn't that what she said? Okay, she tucked that away. She said, Courtney, do you have the patience to let the mud settle in the water and the water become clear?
It's a quote from Lao Tzu.
I said, oh, no, I ain't doing that. I am not doing that. I got to go. And she said, Courtney, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to get she said, do you dream? I said, no, I did all that. And so she said, I'd like you to do that. And again, a challenge with no instructions, just like my mother gave me a challenge with no instruction. And so, long story, I got my dreams, and Gail Delaney, Breakthrough Dreaming. That's the name of the book. I went to the new school. No computers at that time. No. You had to go look and do some research. And so I couldn't go like that. And so I wish Anyway, so So again, now we're talking about how do you. I was able to bring in a dream and go, that's me for this week. And she said, oh, okay. No editing, no, I think I'm this, no, she was able to, in a nutshell, to be able to go, let's do 3 sessions a week for a while now, literally. And because this was my time, I found my person. And so I would have been in her office 5 times a week. And thank God I could afford it. That's a whole other thing. But it gave me, she started to help me build up because I left the house with no life skills. My parents but they did what they could. All parents do what they can. That was something they weren't able to give me. And now it's up to me to recover, to begin the process of, and so that's why it's so important to, what are you going to do while you're waiting for the things to line up so that you woo, and then when you woo, life happens again. So,
I mean, going off of your question before, I think my desire is to create space for the soul to breathe. I think that's why I'm an actor. I think that's why I'm on stage. I think that's why I enjoy telling stories. Because one, like, for example, the other side of rage is peace. But I think people don't always realize the energy it takes to be peaceful. The energy it takes to be kind, the energy it takes not to curse your ass out. You know what I mean? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, that takes energy. And all those things can build up. So I look to create spaces where my soul can breathe. But in the midst of doing that and telling story, the hope is that it will affect other people as well.
Yes.
As you talk about off the stage, then I'm looking to hopefully have that work inspire other people to create space for their soul to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's great when we can tear down the walls and be like, you know what? I'm Dulé from Jersey.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
My family's from Jamaica. And just sit
Yeah.
there and just chat about whatever instead of being, I'm Dulé, how are you?
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because then when we can connect as beings, and the more that we can create space for us to connect as beings,
Yes.
then maybe we can create space for all of us to heal. Then if we can create space for all of us to heal, then maybe we can create space for all of us to grow.
Yes.
And as we're growing and we get our foundation underneath us, then we can dream those dreams and hopefully be able to make this world a better place. That's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
the desire for myself. And you say, what is it that I desire for it all? Is to use my craft to create that kind of space.
Yeah, that's, I mean, beautiful. There's a quote from a Irish poet, David White, who says, the soul would rather die than to live its life as someone else. And that's what so you're talking about creating space for the soul to breathe. I mean, for the real you and the real me. And, part of the question as we're sharing tonight is, when is the last time someone saw the real you? And most importantly, as you said, you could introduce yourself. And when's the last time you saw the real you? When's the last time I saw the real me? Not Dr. Robin, but Robin. And not, poised but whatever I'm bringing. So yeah. Looked like you were.
I was just going to say, you hit the word that was popped in my mind off your question. What do you want for yourself? Yes. You said grow. Growth is the thing for me. I just want to know, I think of the father that my father was, and I knew I wanted to try and be a better father. And then my relationship with him, we got cool again, and that grew from there because I'd seen how he had grown. And he was a different man than he was when I was younger. I just want to grow in my craft every time I do a gig. I'm like, well, I don't care if it's not, do I think this is going to make me rich? Is this going to make me famous? Is there something in there that's going to be a challenge that I'll grow from? And I try and make sure I try and give my kids things that will make them grow. And I think, okay, I'm not completely screwing it up as a dad. Let's keep it moving. You know what I mean? Trying to see if I can get better. And it's not even, and that frees me from goals. If I don't play football, if I don't hit that goal, then I've screwed up. I'm like, I don't know where the destination is, but I know whatever direction I'm heading in, I know my feet are moving. I'm good.
Yes.
As long as I'm growing in all the different aspects of my life. And that's the thing. And then every once in a while you realize, I haven't paid attention to that part of myself or that part of my life or that thing that I thought about.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to do that and I got a little afraid of it. So I sat on it and kind of tried to ignore it. But the reality is you're not letting it grow. You're not putting sunshine on that seed.
Yes.
So so that for me is growth.
Yeah. 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 That's great. And that, you talked about with your kids and your dad, got cool with him, and then there was growth, and then so it's not like we grow and then we're done. No. That's what and Courtney, you say that a lot. We're growing to then grow some more. So we don't.
It'd be great if you were done at some point in time. Wouldn't that be great?
Well,
wouldn't that be cool if you were like?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's
I'm
the
grown.
setup. Right, exactly. I'm grown. Yeah. No, it's great. That's great. Yeah. And it's also a powerful lesson to your children that their father is a whole human being. And a whole human being has holes, HOLES, as well as WHOLE, which I say is like a holy journey, HOLY. But our kids need to see our holes. They need to see our holes so that they can see their own and embrace their own. So that's the growth.
And to know that just because you have holes doesn't mean the whole thing's going to crack and fall apart.
Right.
It's okay. It's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's necessary. Yes. The holes are necessary to claim our full humanity. Yeah.
And I think beyond our children, I think we need to see each other's holes.
Definitely.
You know, because that, when you can see that, you're like, oh, it's not just me.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Okay. Oh, Courtney. Oh, I see you. Okay.
Right.
Cool. Now I can show you me. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Beautiful.
Gosh, I mean, I guess when I think about what I would like to feel more at ease with my fellow man. I think my wife and I talk all the time about how disappointed we are in the way people behave and in the way people think, and I find that it makes me, when I go out into the world, feeling very kind of hesitant to trust and hesitant to really get to know people or have people really get to know me, because I feel like we live in a country that elected a racist like Donald Trump. We live in a place where George Floyd happens. You know, right now what's going on in the Middle East, all this anti-Semitism that's just coming up out of the woodwork, and we're walking amongst each other all day, every day. And knowing all of that makes me kind of recede from my fellow man. I feel mistrustful and not sure who's got my back and who doesn't. We talk about when it goes down, who's gonna let us hide in their basement. We talk about that all the time, and so I would like to feel more at ease in the world in that sense. I'm hoping that we can all get to that place. But I feel like that starts with me and finding a way to see everybody's humanity in spite of all of that.
Yeah, thank you for that, because it's hard to be in this world. I mean, that's part of what we don't admit, that we are wondering, like, who will give us shelter. The Surgeon General is talking about loneliness as an epidemic, as a national health crisis, because we're so isolated. And we're isolated because the world doesn't feel safe. Right. And so it's hard. And I think that's the vulnerability that you just shared that is the step. It is to say, like, my wife and I talk, and we wonder who will hide us. It's not that it's resolved yet. It's that we can admit that we're at home talking about how unsafe we feel. Yeah.
I think what I would like in my life and career would be to embrace maintaining an open perspective about things, as far as like trying to be controlling of everything that happens, embracing obstacles as opportunities or challenges. That's something that when I've done that by accident, it's worked out in my favor. So I would like to find a way to be able to just accept that you can't control everything, and there's no point in stressing about things that you can't control. And when you feel like you don't know the answers, it would be nice to remember that you can always ask for help. I think in the beginnings of my career, I think I've always been really good at asking for help from the OG, so to speak. And there's a quote that I read when I first moved to LA. I can't remember who was by, so forgive me, whoever wrote it, whatever poet wrote it, I don't remember it. But it was like something along the lines of, nobody would care about the modern princes if it weren't for the kings that came before them. And the reason why it stuck with me is, and I thought of it after you said that, you're surprised at how people talk to each other now. And during the strike, I remember seeing like all the comments and all of the SAG pages and everything, and everybody was just so divisive. And what was interesting in a bad way was that if somebody who was a bit older was giving their opinion or perspective about what they think is going on and how they think it should be handled, people were so quick to be like, shut up, old man, or this is a new business. This is not where you're from. And it was just like, I've never thought about that, because as I was venturing into a career that I didn't go to drama school. Like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I always found peace and security in talking to the people who were doing what I wanted to do. I was lucky enough to meet Viola, and lucky to spend time with Denzel and actors like even these gentlemen that I watch and get to learn from them. It's a tool that I think should be valued. And at the end of the day, I just hope I don't forget to just ask for help when I need it.
Mm-hmm. It's great.
Thinking about things that I would like beyond what I would like for me personally, because I think that question encompasses, like, to your point, I feel like I'm beyond fortunate enough to be performing and acting at a time so heavily predicated on the work of artists and actors that have came before me in a way that I've not had a discussion with contemporaries or people my age in Hollywood or in acting where they've echoed the sentiment that I've heard about, all I go out for is a thug or a drug deal. I feel like the strides made in a more positive direction as far as representation in media is something to be proud of. Took an awfully long time, far longer than it should have. But what I am grateful for as of now is to be afforded a landscape in performance that kind of has became something more than that, something that someone like me, a black man, a black actor, can be so many different things, so multifaceted, and be lauded and appreciated for it. Obviously, there's still such a long way to go, but what I would like beyond even my career is that whatever generation comes after me gets to afford a newfound level of comfortability and ease in recognizing and realizing their penchant for performance, devoid of whatever, issues or stereotypes or archetypes that I have to deal with, that I get to enjoy from the hard work of the people that came before me. I kind of related, little unrelated, little psychology term for you. Put that half degree to good use. I didn't finish. I'll just admit that right now. So don't write this down. But when people are confronted with stressful situations, it's sort of perceived in our minds as two different categories of stressors. It's distress, which I'm sure you've heard a lot of, and there's eustress, eustress. And distress is something you perceive that even in following to your natural outcome has no chance of a positive solution. It's what usually leads to depression. It's what usually leads to a loss of, I'll say, hope for sake of getting to my next point. And it more often than not becomes a debilitating state of being. It's antecedent. Eustress is a response to stressors that, when accomplished or overcame, produces an overwhelming amount of gratification and understanding that you achieved something. It's, I think, something I thought every time I'd walk into an audition room is the distressing atmosphere of, as we talked about, me versus them. I have to show them that I can do this thing that I know in my heart of hearts I'm capable of doing. That once I recontextualized into the eustressful scenario, that I'm being given an opportunity to showcase the best of my ability, my take on this character in this moment, I found more than anything, a solidarity in other actors that have lived through the same thing, that have worked in much more stringent and difficult circumstances as far as art is concerned and film at large. And the eustress I find, and that I would like all people to find, is that every generation, ones that have came before current time and to come hereafter, will all have their set of difficulties and trepidations. And it's how you meet those difficulties and meet that adversity in order to overcome, with the understanding that you will overcome, that I hope all actors and all performers and hopefully all people afford themselves in any stressful situation. But that's idealistic. So
Yeah. Are there any roles that you just won't do?
I mean, I'll say this. It all depends on the material, because I will play a role if the whole picture that's being shown is a full story. But if inside this story, it's just this negative attribute of something, then I'm most likely going to be not interested in playing that. Because look, this beautiful stuff about it, being a black man, and there's also things that can be very challenging. We don't always walk on water. So I don't mind showing both sides of the coin, as long as both sides of the coin are being showed.
Yeah. That's great.
100%. It's the context, both in the work itself, the script, but also the context we are in the world. Like, you know, I remember having a conversation with a friend when Empire came out, and he started to go down the road of, you know, it's a music show, but really, but they were gangsters beforehand, they were drug dealers beforehand. And I said, but Blackish exists, so I'm good. And they're full human beings within that story. You know what I mean? And that for me was what made it okay. If it were 1983 and there was nothing else on TV, and the only thing you were getting was these people who used to be, you know, made their money from blah, 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 I got problems. You know what I mean? So the context that's happening in the world, but also the context that, you know, what you've put into the craft itself.
You know what's also so rich about both of those responses, even with a drug dealer, it's so interesting. Like, do people not think that drug dealers care about their children's homework getting done? They do. I mean, they do.
He's got to be a human being.
Right, they're a human being. They're so.
Maybe they don't care about the homework.
Okay. All right.
Just saying.
All right.
But
they
you
might.
gotta know your math. You gotta know your math,
Right,
Can you
okay.
count?
All right.
How's your count?
math, you said math.
That's great. Listen, I mean, and there's no joke with that. Meaning, that's very real.
They do calculus.
They do. I mean, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing. No, but it's so important because this, you know, the dad who is the lawyer. Well, what's that mean? I mean, he's a lawyer, and do we feel comfortable because you're playing a lawyer that has no life, that has no story, that has no struggle? So it's really important to think about how multidimensional these characters really are. Yeah.
It's kind of piggybacking off of that. Like, it's funny that it's kind of coincidental that the most stereotypical art to perform in terms of roles usually are the least satiating, I feel. So I don't necessarily feel like if given a role that was, you know, catering to an archetype or a stereotype that is harmful, I don't necessarily feel there's much draw to entertain it anyhow, especially if you can consider, like, media and pop culture kind of incite a lot of perceptions about certain things. The worst and funniest example is that people think Spider-Man's webs were actually generated in his body, which is disgusting. But that, because you saw that in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, that's what you thought what it was. So it's a really roundabout way of saying, like, I don't know why that made me think of that, but it's worth mentioning. Picking roles carefully.
You know, you actually made me think of one more thing, though. I will say this because it also depends on the context of what you've been doing.
Right.
right? You know, to this point, because I've been playing a dude who's basically got a big black S on his chest and is a good husband, good dad, good, you know, he's a good guy.
Yes.
And my brother, you know, and I love the character, and I played him for like a decade and change. Next thing I do whenever I'm done with this character, I'm gonna play a dick. I'm gonna play a dude who's just all kinds of messed up.
Jason George is the dick.
Here's the reality. You were talking about the time that we are in right now in this industry, and the amazing part about it is they broke up cable, created streaming services, and now the streaming services are starting to bundle back up and it's becoming cable again. But the beauty of where we are,
Fine point on it.
is that now that you're selling directly to the consumer, diversity is no longer the tokenism that it was when we grew up, right? Where we need one brother, and you can have a woman, maybe a brother, and that's it. If you're gonna have a Latino, then you got to figure you got to pull one of the woman or the brother out. One of them has got to come out because we only got so many spaces. Blah blah blah. But now diversity is a requirement of the business model. You need a little something for everybody. Seniors want their show, Grace and Frankie. Latinos want their show.
Yeah.
Indigenous people want their show, Reservation Dogs. Everybody wants it. So the point is, not only do you not have to stop pursuing your dream, you need to find somebody to partner with and take what was your problem and turn it into your superpower.
Yes, absolutely.
And make that show, make that series,
Absolutely.
write that play.
And I think that show has to have a big D on the cover. Right here. Partner up with the big D.
Because D sells shows, D sells tickets.
Yeah. Do you code switch? How do you take your natural feelings? Your father died a few years ago, and again, just so that everyone is hearing the question, you were out in public and were, overtaken. You used the word, you didn't want to break down. I think that's always an interesting phrase about breaking down, when sometimes what's happening is we're opening up. We're not breaking down, we're opening up. But what your question is, whatever it is that is going on, how do you manage it as a Black man if that happens in public and no one knows you?
I will say I think it's understandable though, because emotions it's a very intimate thing. So I don't know if right now, and maybe that's something that I need to work on, that if I was overcome with emotion of sorrow, I don't know if I would sit right here and stay here and be like, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to just do it. I think you have to give yourself some grace, It's like, I think I probably would be like, I'm sorry, y'all, excuse me 1 second. Because that is such an intimate thing. And I think as an actor, you should celebrate that you can allow yourself to be able to have that emotion.
We raise, when little girls fall, they fall down and we pick them up and we kiss their boo-boo and we, pick a colored Band-Aid and make a big deal out of it. And when boys fall,
Rub some dirt in it.
You're right.
Get up and right. Get up and keep it moving. And and if you, and I can give you something to cry about. So what you're talking about is how you reclaim your birthright to be whole in a society where you're not always safe, where there is George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and too many other men that look like you who were minding their own business and ended up dead. And so in this moment, how can you, in this context, be held by us like now and validated in the way that each of these brothers just did, which is to say you were courageous and you were brave and you're also whole? Because right now, which is what Courtney was asking, what did you wish? And what I hear you saying is, I wished that there had been safe space for me to simply be who I am without hesitation or fear. These are things that white men in general, not that white men don't worry about being judged for vulnerability, because they do, but they don't worry that they may end up dead from it. It's not the same injury. It's not the same wound. And so it's important right now that you are owning that there's more to you, and you wanted that more to have safe expression right then, but it couldn't. And so how do you bring that as an actor, but also as a human being, into this moment of being whole?
And that's why we're here.
Right.
The fact that you shared that, and I said, well, what was wrong? Why didn't you feel safe? And he said, well, it's a bunch of white people around me. And for the white people in the audience, there's an understanding that, why you couldn't cry? Did I make you feel? I had no idea that you don't feel safe enough on the street to be able to have some emotion. Do you understand how potentially deadly we make a wrong move and we get pulled over? And we people have no idea what George Floyd could have been me. I was in my house. We had just moved there in La Cañada, beautiful neighborhood, and I heard something outside, and I said, let me go. And a black person, when you hear noise in the house, what do? You go to the kitchen and get the biggest knife that you can. This is what we, just teaching. Okay. Just teaching. This is real talk. Write it down. And something told me not to go across the plate glass window. Put the knife up and go. I think it's probably outside the front door. Outside the front door, open up. The alarm was on. The children were 3. They were all asleep outside. Let me turn the alarm off. It's just probably a script or something. Open the front door. There's 5 sheriff officers in the front yard, and screaming at the top of their lungs, "Come out here! It's midnight." And I knew not to say anything because I've seen enough Law and Order, and I've been in a couple. So I walk out with my hands up, and I said quietly, "I live here. Get out here!" But on my knees, hands behind my head, and finally, a sister who was one of the officers saw me and said, "Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord." He lives here, and so this is, if it was a white gentleman or lady, they would have said, "Excuse me, ma'am, I'm so sorry to bother you," but we had heard, and it's just that, that reality, that fear, that is just a part of our lives. And what is the cost? The high cost of high living. What is the cost of that for our souls, and where do we go to repair that? Which is what you've brought to us. And so the courage you didn't have to say anything, just like the muscle-bound brother who brought us the rage. Right. He didn't have to stand up. I said, "Give me your number." We're locked now to be able to share. He's on a journey. And so I just... And you're on a journey. You're on a journey.
You're on a journey, absolutely.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. You didn't have to say anything.
Yes. By the way, just so that you know, if you've never gone to therapy, this is it. Isn't that fabulous? This is it. This whole myth of what you do, and it's just, this is it. It's a place that's safe to ask questions and ponder things and wander together. So
But black folks don't do
I just want to say real quick though, hold on to that though, because that's what actors are. We have to be full of emotion. Don't feel like you have to tuck that away somewhere and lock it up and throw it into the sea somewhere. Let that emotion live, because that is what is that I feel that's what brings out the brilliance when you do need to go and tap into it. That it's right there, as you were saying, trying to get rid of it. That's if that's there, let it live. Yeah. Man.
How do you take care of yourselves mentally, and what do you do to care for yourself mentally and emotionally, particularly given the harsh realities of this craft and of getting roles. And whomever.
I would say that what works for me, at least, is to value my own opinion of myself more than other people's. That's always what's carried me through. So if I hear no, or if I have anything discouraging, I respect that, but I don't necessarily take that to mean that I'm any less. I just take that to mean that, okay, this is not going to work out, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm less than in any way. And so in that way, you learn to not put somebody else's opinion above your own, of yourself. You should always be the final authority on who you are and what you're capable of. And don't let anybody else take that power from you. And that's just what works for me.
Yeah, that's great.
So someone once told me that the greatest trick your mind will ever play on you is forcing you to believe that how you're feeling in this moment won't end. And I think a lot of times in depression and people that deal with that and struggle with that state of mind is perceiving it to be a constant, as if it has no conclusion. And I think what's helped me in work and in life is recognizing how I feel in that moment. And this, I'm kind of retroactively touching on what you said and how you were discussing before. You understand, a lot of people, mainly white contemporaries, that will have been afforded spaces to be vulnerable and to be unapologetically themselves without worry of harm or discomfort amongst other people. And I'm saying, if you can recognize a space for yourself in that, whatever that looks like, whether it is at home, whether it is in a community of people that make you feel as if you are safe, outside or not, then harbor that, cultivate it. Remember that you've picked that for a reason. The notion that depression has no good days, as if you can't overcome this, is a trick that your mind is playing on you through hard work. Therapy, as seems to be a recurring theme, is another great way to sort of circumvent that. It's a very, it can be a very trying experience, acting, entertainment, but you do it because you believe you are one of the best to do it and the most capable, and you hold on to that, because I am inclined to agree. So,
how do you overcome the fear? And I think, how do you give into, meaning in that moment, how do you let the moment take over and you become one with it?
I mean, is it the first take? I'm only half kidding, because from a purely business standpoint, you want to give the director, the writer, you want to give them the thing that was their original concept and everything like that. And if that worked, now it's mine. And that's the whole point. The whole reason why they hired you is, the director's in charge of a million things, and he's delegated, you're in charge of props, you're in charge of camera, Mr. DP, you're in charge of lights, you're in charge of this thing. You're in charge of that character. Yeah. So I need you to tell me, I've got ideas, but I need you to tell me if my ideas work for that character or not. And I need you to answer a whole bunch of problems that I don't even know are problems yet. I need you to come up with a whole bunch of ideas that I haven't even begun to think of, because I've been thinking of everything else. They'll have some, so they'll give you stuff to start with, and you come with other. So that's kind of, so once you give the one thing that's the director's thought, and then you're like, now I'm gonna surprise you a little bit in fun ways. If it comes to you, don't go out of your way to make, like don't just wreck shots. You know what I mean? but know that freedom, like that's your job to an extent, is to create those happy accents that the director didn't plan on.
That's great. That's great.
And I will say really quick too, I think every time I do something on screen, when I'm driving home, I come up with another idea. It's like, I'm like, dang, I should have did it that way. You know what I mean? So I think that's just a part of the process. You just keep reaching and keep growing.
And I think that is always the case, meaning that, the artist goes back in, and I've heard someone say that sometimes the correction is worse than the mistake. And can we trust that how we showed up in that moment was enough? I mean, really was enough, because the fantasy about what we would have done, because I do that. I mean, I'm driving home, and, the other side of my world is not just this, but auditions that I've had and pilots that I've done. And they thought I should wear certain colors because Mrs. Obama looked good in yellow. And I was like, that's really not a good color for me. But because I'm black and she's black, they thought, oh, you should. So, I was like, okay, well, that's not exactly. But how do I bring my original self to each moment and not critique it in a way that then diminishes what I created? Yeah. Yeah. So I know that we could keep staying in therapy tonight, right? Like we could keep doing this, but I think we are at time. We're probably past time. Yeah.
We are. And I want to thank everybody for being with us tonight. This has been so amazing.